Welcome to our free Westernacher webinar about warehouse automation. Before we start, we want to quickly introduce ourselves. Your hosts today is myself, Marco Trottmann. I'm our practice director for warehouse management in the US. I have been doing warehouse projects for almost 18 years now, and I'm very excited to talk to you about the latest and greatest in warehouse automation today. Sam?
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Sam Zahn. I'm a consultant at Westernacher in the warehousing business unit in US, and I've been working with consumer products and the manufacturing projects, as well as having a keen interest in the industry trend analytics in the US when it comes to warehousing.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. So for those who don't know who Westernacher is, I will give you the very fast 2 minutes elevator pitch. So Westernacher is the quality leader in business process and technology innovation globally. Westernacher was founded in 1969, even before SAP was founded. And our US headquarters are in Boston, Massachusetts. One very unique fact about Westernacher is that we are 100% employee owned, so that means nobody can buy us, and that allows us to offer our customers a very unique long-term stability. We have about 70 consultants in the US, and roughly half of them only focus on warehouse management projects or warehouse management solutions. Globally, we have about 500 consultants, and we have a presence in 14 countries. And that number is still growing. And since about 1990, we've been a SAP partner working with SAP solutions, and especially their warehouse management or supply chain offerings. So here on the map, you can see we are basically everywhere. We have highlighted our headquarters here, but we're in Asia, we're in Europe, strong foothold. Our global headquarters is in Heidelberg in Germany, very close to SAP. And Westernacher is basically a boutique supply chain consulting company. We offer the full range of services from consulting and implementation, rollouts, best practices. We have our own training unit where we enable our customers with the products and the solutions we build. We focus as well on technology integration, also especially automation in the warehouse management field. And to complete the package, we also offer AMS service to help our customers support their operations after the go live. Okay, so that's all about Westernacher. Let's deep dive into the topic. So as you can see, we have divided this webinar into 3 sections. First, the main important questions: why automate? Yeah, and why now? What's changed? What's the latest developments, and how do we think that has an impact on the current automation landscape? Then the next section deals with what to automate. Here we will provide you with a very interesting framework we've developed to help you make better decisions where to focus on your automation efforts. And then the last part deals with how do you integrate your automation into your existing SAP landscape. So for the first 2 parts, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Sam, who will give you the big picture.
Thank you, Marco. So let's jump right in. Why automate? So automation is using equipment and algorithms to facilitate and streamline manual tasking processes. A good way to gauge the trend toward automation would be seeing the trend in goods-to-man strategy adoption. In a goods-to-man strategy, instead of warehousing operators walking to the aisles to pick this stuff manually, conveyors and other systems being in placed in warehouses so that the goods travel to the operators. Currently, more than 10% of U.S. warehouses are using this automated equipment strategy to enable the goods-to-man strategy. Now, we expect this trend to accelerate over the next 5 years, with research predicting that the number of robotics in a warehouse is growing 15 times in the next 5 years, as you can see on the chart on the left. So, what is causing this dynamic change in the attitude towards automation? What is making it an attractive option for warehouses to invest in? So we have identified a list of drivers and also the causal relationships between the list of drivers. So now in this section, we're going to talk about the different levels of drivers in details. The most apparent driver for a trend towards automation is the increase in labor and land cost. Labor cost is the single largest expense for warehouse operations, and the total employment in the warehousing space has grown 6% last year, which means there's a hot demand for labor driving the labor pool, driving the labor price up. The latest economic indicator has put that just last quarter, the annual adjusted wage inflation in the logistics space has been around 4 to 5%. So in the end, what this means for warehouses, it's getting harder to find qualified workers. And in a recent survey, more than 40% of warehouse managers have reported that inability to attract and retain quality hourly workforce as one of their top concerns. It is the same when it comes to land as well. Land costs have been rising steadily, and also the marginal benefit of increasing land being deployed for warehousing purposes is decreasing as the warehouses get larger over the years. According to Cushman Wakefield, the average size of a warehouse has almost tripled since 2000. And as this warehouse gets larger, the internal traveling distance get larger, and basically it makes addressing operational challenges harder by just expanding space. So instead of addressing the issues using more labor and more land, more warehouses are moving towards automation as a potential solution. We also look at what is actually driving up the labor and land costs. And we find that in the end, it's because warehouses are getting more frequent and more complex orders. What used to be a pallet order are now cases. What was a case order is now a piece pick. In the past, a warehouse that deals with B2B sales might only be shipping out full pallets. But right now, we are facing more and more pressure from the consumers, and those can trickle down layer from layer. Take retail, for example, facing a lot of pressure to ship out piece picks directly to the consumer. And the same is actually for a lot of manufacturers. In the end, the B2B end customers are requiring faster turnovers, faster shippings. And in the end, generally, you're not only fulfilling full pallets, you're also fulfilling cases, pieces, and these drives up the complexity, requiring more land and labor. So what is driving up the frequent and complex orders? And the core cause of this, we think, is the higher end customer expectation. There are two major shifts in customer expectations. The first is that customers demand fast deliveries in the age of e-commerce. And the second is that the consumer also demands more varieties, which leads to more SKUs. Just think about the recent Thanksgiving. The same store sale for physical stores has been decreased actually for 4%, but the online sale has been increased for 14%. And when it comes to e-commerce, consumers have very high expectations on delivery time. The current standard is already 2-day shipping, and in some of the big cities, we're seeing a standard of same-day shipping and maybe even 2-hour shipping in some cities. So with this change in consumer expectations driving up complexities, warehouses has to invent new ways, adopt new technologies to handle these challenges. To gain this competitive advantage, we're seeing warehouses moving more towards automation. So here's the question: what should warehouses automate? How should we think about the different varieties of automation? In the second section, we broke down automation by using this framework into two dimensions. The first is automating the decision-making of the warehouse. And here's basically how smart a warehouse can be. Can the system tell exactly where should certain products be stored, how should the stock to be picked, how to optimize resources automatically. So for example, maybe interleaving the task of picking and receiving fits into this decision-making smartness of automation. Now on the right-hand side, we have goods movement automation, and here it's just simply how various movements from point A to point B in the warehouse can be executed by machinery. So think about conveyor systems that transports goods from the pick zone to the pack zone. So using this framework, we've mapped 4 different levels of automation. From the low end, we have low automation, we have system automation, then we have more mechanist automation, and on the top level, we have sophisticated automation. So we're going to delve into each of these automations and talk about the technologies being deployed there. For low automation, basically warehouses are using simple systems that are mainly for inventory recording purposes. Maybe the warehouse is still using a lot of paper-based operations, and these operations may be hindered by the system, but the precise decisions are still made by operators. So system might suggest the storage zone or aisle to pick, but the exact product, the exact bin to pick from is still being made by operators. Now, one level higher of automation, we have system automation. Here, more sophisticated systems being deployed to enable real-time data transmission, and some strategies being built in the system to allow more efficiency. So using this system automation, a lot of other technologies can be incorporated, such as mobile RF, voice-directed technologies, pick by light, pick by voice, pick by vision. And here, the decisions are being proposed by the warehouse system to be very precise and very actionable. So, for example, having the system automation enables pick by light, as shown in the pictures on the lower left, which is suited for more smaller items. Or you have pick by voice, which this information is communicated via a headset, so that the operators can also free both the hands to move the goods quickly. On the cutting edge, we also have pick by vision, and in which augmented reality is being used to overlay information straight into eyewears. Using these technologies can improve pick rate by 30 to 50% and significantly reduce picking error. Using a pick by voice technology, for example, can reduce error up to 99.7%. One level higher, and here we're dealing with some automation on the goods movement axis. Here it's the mechanist automation, and basically a goods-to-person model is being deployed here. For example, let's take conveyors. Just by deploying conveyors, you're replacing the travel distances with the automation technologies. And since traveling time is the single biggest time consumer when it comes to picking, costing around 70% of the total time, deploying a conveyor to replace that manual traveling activity can enable a 3 to 5 times of pick rate, as you're using the time being saved on actual picking instead of traveling. Some other frequent technology being seen here is the ASRS, Automated Storage and Retrieval System. In ASRS, you can think about very high rack, automated racks that can store a lot of bins and what is solved is the usual dilemma faced by any warehouses, which is space utilization versus handling accessibility. In the usual warehouse, you can increase space utilization, but then usually that leads to very cumbersome picking process. But by using a ASRS system, it enables the space utilization to increase as it reduces the aisle width and expanding the storage space vertically. At the same time, it makes the handling process easier since it's all automated. The types of ASRS varies by size of material. There are pallets ASRS, case and tray ASRS. They vary by mechanism, how fast they can move on whether it's vertically and horizontally integrated, and the depth, single or double deep. Regardless, they can be connected to a picking station using conveyors, where workers can execute their picking orders from there and view and manage the workflow on a warehouse management system. Okay, moving on to the top level of automation where things get really sophisticated. And here we are eliminating a lot of manual movements and streamlining the order picking process using complex decision-making logic. Some examples of technology being deployed here: automatic sorters. If you're using let's say a wave picking strategy, or for example, if you're email delivery where there's tons of different orders that needs to be distributed to different geographic areas, these automatic sorters have the laser and visual to identify the objects, transporting them and grouping them into orders. We also have AGV, automated guided vehicles. These has been consistent for a while. The technology was developed in 1960s, but recently getting really popular. So, for example, Amazon Robotics, you might have heard of, using the Amazon bots to transfer entire racks to the pickers to enable better picking. And the recent hype around this is because the technology has fundamentally changed from just AGV for, let's say, moving pallets to AGV utilized for piece picking. All right, some other technologies such as robotic picking systems are getting more traction as well. Here, that's really, really cutting edge, as the robotic picking systems can handle really small items using robotic arms or suction cups, and these can pick with very high level of precision by employing good visual 3D modeling techniques. And then last of all, we have automatic palletizers, which utilizes advanced cardinalization algorithm to really group cases together and save space. And these can be connected to a conveyor in the grand process in an automated warehouse. So that was the overview on the different levels of automation. So how can that be applied to you specifically? And so here is a snapshot done by a recent research from PRG on the various picking technologies being used, and for your reference. And so here, the general trend we were seeing is a decrease in reliance on paper-based technologies and a sharp increase in goods-to-person strategy. It almost doubled in just 3 years. So to decide the right level of automation, you need to ask yourself whether you can achieve a higher ROI by automating mainly the brain of the warehouse or by automating the body of the warehouse, meaning the goods movement. And the exact automation level, you can consult your hardware providers to decide the right level for you. But generally, what we've seen is warehouses tend to move level by level from, let's say, a rudimentary automation level to system automation, and then gradually to a mechanized automation, then to a sophisticated automation. And so here is a chart summarizing an estimated cost for each automation categories, as well as the payback period. As you move more and more towards advanced automation, the cost increase and also the payback period increase overall. So we have talked about the different levels of automation, the different technologies of automation, as well as the underlying force of why more warehouses are adopting automation to become more competitive, since the consumer trend is driving up complexity in warehouses. So now we're moving from the why and the what to the how. So with knowing that the challenges in warehouses is upcoming and knowing that automation can solve it, what are some of the ways we can manage automation and integrate it? Let me turn it back to Marco to talk more about that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam, for this very good overview on the whys. And as Sam has already mentioned, the supply chain landscape is changing, whether you change or not. So in order to not be left behind, you have to think about automation. And the question is then, how do I integrate? And if I integrate, how can I do it even better than it has been done in the past? And that's what we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. So as we said before, some key challenges that you have in normal warehouse operations are addressed by automation. That might be low inventory accuracy, that might be low space utilization or low picking efficiency. But if you choose to integrate automation systems, then you open up a level of new challenges. Some come from the technology itself, and some come from the way automation is actually delivered and integrated. So you might have a system in place where your landscape consists of your ERP system, you have a WM system in place, and then you might connect new warehouse control systems, or you already have existing ones in your landscape. And the classical warehouse control systems usually have been black boxes. So that means you have a supplier of maybe hardware and software, and the software part of it, you cannot see what's going on in there. It magically controls your automated warehouse. But if you want to do any changes, or also if you want to have a holistic view covering your warehouse management system and your warehouse control system, you're out of luck. And due to these additional interfaces, additional hosting, you also have a higher TCO, and you're always dependent on your third-party supplier for support and for any kind of optimization you want to do. So this raises the question, how can we improve the system integration? How can we do it better? And we're trying to provide you with an answer for that, considering SAP software. Before we dive into that, I just want to give you a quick overview of these classical layers we would usually talk about when we talk about warehouse automation. So again, we have our ERP system that is integrated to our warehouse management system. And usually below, you have a warehouse control system layer, and below that, you have the PLC layer. So that's the programmable logic controllers that drive, control, monitor the drive, sensors, scanners, your automation hardware equipment. And both of these layers need to be integrated with a specific communication protocol. So there's communication happening between the PLC and the WCS, and for sure you also need to integrate it to your WMS system to make sure the right kind of stock is actually transported. And if we look at that in a little more detail, how can it be done with SAP technology or SAP solutions? You will see there's 5 common architectural options that we see in the market, and each of these options has certain implications, but I just want to highlight the let's say the classical one and the one we have identified as best practice, or also the best in terms of total cost of ownership and flexibility. So you can see from left to right, the classical integration is just leveraging a third-party WCS system that controls your hardware, and you connect your warehouse management system, in this case EWM, by SAP via maybe IDOC technology, or any legacy technology. And if you look more to the right, oh, sorry, go back one step. Yeah, if you look more to the right, you can see EWM brings with a sub-module called MFS, Material Flow System, and that enables you to directly connect your automation hardware, your PLCs, to EWM without the need for any middleware in between. And that opens up yeah, a lot of very interesting opportunities and possibilities. So if we look again at the classical connection, the advantages for this is usually you get a full package by your hardware equipment manufacturer for the automation, and they will tell you usually that in order to ensure that we can provide the best performance or the required performance, you need to buy the whole package from us. That means you need to buy the hardware and the software, and we will be responsible implementing the software and tailoring to your specific warehouse setup. And for sure, this is one of the core competencies of these equipment manufacturers, but it comes with a lot of disadvantages. First of all, there's no transparency across the systems because the systems are just integrated through some communication protocol, but you will have to use two systems, two styles and ways of monitoring to see what's going on in your warehouse and to also see what's going on in your automation part of the warehouse. It also uses proprietary and hardware-specific software and development, so that means you cannot see what's going on in there, you cannot change it easily, you cannot leverage your own resources. If you have, let's say, ABAP developers, there's no way. You are tied to that third-party warehouse control system supplier, and if you want to change anything in your warehouse, then you need to get back to these guys. And usually we see higher hardware license and maintenance costs, as well as training costs, because as said before, you need to train your people in different systems, different technologies, and in the end that leads to higher total cost of ownership. But there's a better way to do it, and that is leveraging SAP technology across the board. So if you leverage EWM with the MFS component and directly connect your PLC hardware to EWM, then you see the full transparency across the systems because all monitoring and troubleshooting is integrated and triggered from EWM itself. Also, the decision making regarding put away or stock removal can be made based on the status of the automation system and the warehouse management system. So there's no silo of information as it's an integrated core component. The material flow component can make smarter decisions, and there's a new buzzword that you might have heard about. It's called warehouse execution systems. So that's the answer of the classical WCS providers to make their systems smarter, which basically means integrating WMS and WCS tighter. But SAP already has this today because it's the same platform, it's the same data, and they can access the information for both systems. And in the long run, you will benefit with the lower license, maintenance, training costs because your people work in the same technology, and you also get rid of your dependencies to a third-party software supplier. The SAP market is big. There is not only Westernacher as a company, and there's also a big share of experienced people that you can leverage here. One of the disadvantages I want to still mention is if you implement a system where the software part of automation is delivered by a different party than the hardware part, then you want to make sure that there's a really close collaboration between the SAP team and the automation hardware suppliers to make sure you really reach your performance targets. So then again, what are the main advantages of using EWM with the MFS component? First and most important for me is there's no separate WCS subsystems required anymore, which allows you to have better visibility, better integration, reduce TCO, and get rid of dependencies to external suppliers. You have this flexible deployment architecture options. So as you've seen in the big picture, there's different types of automation hardware. There's classical automation hardware like conveyors or OSRS systems, which you can directly integrate. There might be some cutting edge hardware like autonomous shuttles or like AutoStore from Swisslog, which still might require an external WCS system. but all these integration or deployment options are supported by EWM. And as MFS is a core part of EWM, you can actively or separately activate it through configuration. Yeah, it's not a completely new box you need to install. It's already there. It has this WS capabilities to the common environment with EWM, and basically also you benefit from the long-term support because SAP is one of the biggest software companies in the world. Some of the smaller automation companies might go out of the market. So you also get more security and stability for your investment. A few other benefits that you should keep in mind is there's an opportunity for standardization. If you have a SAP strategy, then the interfaces to different automation pieces, different sites can be standardized in a way that you say SAP is your common platform. You have a common interface definition, and then all your hardware supplier need to adhere to that interface specification, which in the end lowers your TCO. And you also enable common monitoring platforms, so you can cross-train your users from different sites and can leverage the existing knowledge already. It's also open source, so to say, because SAP allows you to look into the source code, so you can leverage your existing ABAP resources and knowledge for troubleshooting and maybe even do small optimizations yourself without the need for external partners. And you can also see that SAP is constantly improving the product in this field. Yeah? So since 5.1, we had basic warehouse control system capabilities for integrating conveyors and ASRS. But since then, up until the latest version 9.4 or 9.5, SAP has constantly added new features to have more standard coverage for more complex automation hardware. So that we expect this to continue in this fashion, and that gives you the security that SAP still sees this as a strategic part of the project and product and constantly improves in this area. So one last thing I want to mention here is if you think about doing an automation project, and this is regardless of if you do it with SAP products or any other piece of software, one thing to keep in mind is to use the right tools to safeguard your implementation project. And one of the most important things in my opinion here is to use a visualization or modeling tool to make sure that when you are in the software implementation phase, you already have a way of simulating the later automation hardware. Just imagine it's a new site, it's being built, or if you have an existing site where you replace maybe only the PLCs to modernize some components, but you have a 24/7 operation. Yeah? So how do you make sure the software, once really deployed in a live environment, is stable enough to have minimal interruptions in your process, or just to make sure that you have a very high level of stability and quality already. And one of the key components here is to use capable and high quality simulation software to make sure in the test phase you can test without having access to the real hardware, to the real site. And as a last piece, I want to give you a quick highlight for one of the projects we did actually as Westernacher. So our customer in this area was a consumer goods dairy products company, and we helped them over a 12-month period in 2015 to modernize their distribution centers. So we were a general contractor and also did a retrofit for their PLC software. That means we raised the technology level from Siemens S5 to S7 model, and the automated system here was multi-depth location 5 ALUS automatic high-bay ASRS system, and we have also integrated scanners for ID tracking. We have integrated label printers that were installed on the conveyors, and in the end this helped our customer to achieve improved traceability to better scanning and also direct integration into the warehouse management system processes, increased efficiency due to the technology change, which allowed for some more efficient processes, and in the end reduced TCO and ensured scalability for future improvements and optimizations. So a few key takeaways for you before we go to the Q&A section. Basically, there's a paradigm shift happening in consumer expectations and behaviors, and that requires a new approach to warehousing and fulfillment. Whether you like it or not, that's going to happen, and actually right now leading companies are utilizing automation to address these challenges already. And as we have heard before in Sam's framework, automation can improve your process decision making, but also your goods movement efficiency. So there's these two dimensions to consider. To make sure this is a success, in our experience, warehouse automation requires very specialized knowledge and a tailored approach in the system integration. So this is not something your common SAP consultancy can do. Yeah, you really need specialists, and you need special approach and a lot of experience to do this right. And with SAP products leveraging EWM with the MFS component, you can render separate WCF systems obsolete. And also the sub-technology platform enables you different integration options for automation hardware to accommodate simple to very sophisticated scenarios. So we're at the end of our main presentation now. I want to thank you very much for joining here, and I want to open the Q&A part of the discussion. So if you have any questions, please raise them in the question part on the WebEx, and make sure that you select all panelists so we all can see them, and then we'll try to go as many questions as possible in the remaining time. Okay, we got a first question here. What factors should be considered to move from one level of automation to another? So Sam, maybe you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure, Marco. Yeah, so besides what we listed on the summary chart, the different investment horizons and payback period, some of the other factors that you might want to consider when moving from one level of automation to another might be the adherence with the underlying strategies. So if you're moving from just a pallet case to more piece picking, so maybe the first question should be, what is the tectonic shift in picking strategy that you are deploying? And then build the automation strategy on top of that process change. And the second factor could be scalability, to make sure that during the design process, deploy a system and the hardware that can sustain not only the current operation level, but also much further ahead. And then the last factor I can think of is the organizational change that you need to plan ahead to make sure that during the implementation there's no surprises.
Very good. And maybe if I can add to that, you should always see automation initiative as a holistic approach. Yeah? If you go from just paper-based to some more integrated technology like pick by voice or just RF guns, you can get quick benefits and quick return on invest. But an automation system, in terms of a sophisticated automation system, is also usually designed for a very specific throughput and workflow. So you should think ahead. If you watch back to the return on invest periods we have mentioned, you should plan ahead at least 10 years, maybe 15 years in the future if you can, and try to build a system that still suits your needs in that future time. Okay, I see we got another question here. So question is, what are the implications on SAP EWM and MFS with the new EWM embedded for S/4HANA? So as you might have heard, SAP now offers two options for deploying EWM. There's the classical approach, so to say, where we have EWM on a separate box, the supply chain management platform, or with S4HANA, you can also deploy EWM as an embedded part. So that means WM has not been transferred over to the S4HANA portfolio. So the replacement for WM in the long run will be EWM embedded for S4HANA. And for sure, that already has the current feature set that EWM has at the moment, and you can also integrate automation hardware there. But there's a few specific considerations I would recommend if you think about going to S4HANA, or you already may be on S4HANA, and you think about more sophisticated warehouse automation. First of all, what we would usually recommend based on our experience, think about the type of automation you're considering. If it's pallet conveyors, pallet ASRS, that's usually slower paced and that doesn't require very fast transmission times for the communication, and that might work with a approach that a lot of companies are using for S4HANA with cloud hosting. But if you think about case conveyors, which might be really fast-paced and they might require transmission times or decision-making times in the area of 150, 200 milliseconds, then it can be very challenging in a hosted solution to guarantee these response times. So depending on the kind of equipment you're considering, we would recommend to talk to an experienced partner and then really think about what's the best option to guarantee the long-term stability of the solution. So everything that's fast and modern might require you to still go with the classical option of deploying EWM on a separate box, and then we would recommend be as close as possible to the physical site to ensure the network connectivity is stable and fast and has very low response times. Otherwise, I thank you again. I wish you a great day, and I hope we will hear each other again in one of our upcoming webinars. Just make sure you stay up to date on the Westernacher website. Any new webinar we will publish there, and you can just sign up and join in again. Thank you very much, and have a great day.